Can we put our hands together to welcome Peter Doe?
So 27 years ago, when my daughter started high school, they did a little exercise, and you can do the maths. 32 students go home and find out where your parents were born. This is Perth, Western Australia. 32 students, where were your mother and father born? And in the morning they reported back there was 2 students who had a mother and a father born in Australia. The other 30 students, one or both parents were born overseas. And they spoke between them 40 different languages at home. Some of them 2, 3, 4 languages. Is that a diverse classroom or what? Perth, Western Australia, 30 out of 32 had parents born overseas. Only 2, and my daughter was one of those 2, had both parents born in Australia. Hands up who thinks it's diverse. Who thinks it's diverse? 30 out of 32 diverse. I guess the answer is, it depends on your perspective. So Peter Dew's my name. I'm going to talk to you about inclusion and diversity, and I'm going to come at it from a different angle. I think it's really powerful if organisations, cultures, societies, professional speakers are truly inclusive of diversity at a deeper level. So, my daughter's classroom, it was a private school. They were all from wealthy, well-to-do families. It was a Christian school, so the values were all very similar. It was a lit sporting school, so the boys played rugby and the girls played netball. That was not a diverse classroom at all. There was no children there who had Down syndrome. Anyone who was sight impaired or could not see had to go to a special school. And if you had an intellectual disability, once again, excluded 27 years ago. So I want to talk to you about inclusion and diversity and what it really means. Now I have to up front say I'm speaking from my perspective and my experience. So what is inclusion and diversity? My definition. Inclusion, a society, a workplace, a culture where everyone is welcome. This is my 8th trip to Malaysia in the last 15 years. And I'm happy to say every time I've been here, I've been 100% welcome. I've done some wrong things. I've said some things that were perhaps ignorant on my part, and you have forgiven me, you've accepted me, and you have welcomed me. That is a truly inclusive environment where everyone feels welcome at the workplace, in the training room. Diversity, my definition, all the different ways that people are different. Not just let's aim for gender diversity, cultural diversity, all the other ways as well. That is a truly diverse society, workplace, culture. But they don't just happen, and we heard about intention earlier on today. So, my challenge to all of you is be the champions of true inclusion and diversity. We can have top-up policies, but unless it filters down and we live a life, we demonstrate, we become the change agents for inclusion and diversity, it doesn't really matter. It's just another human resource policy. So my challenge to all of you is to live, walk, talk, embrace, be change agents for inclusion and diversity. But why does it matter? I think that inclusion and diversity is the secret sauce to successful organisations. And we've just heard about the importance of adapting, being agile, uncertainty, And if you have a true inclusive and diverse workshop, you will respond to change, to challenge better. Diverse workforces, inclusive workforces are more resilient. The creativity goes up, the innovation goes up, the loyalty with a truly inclusive and diverse workplace goes up, and they're things that we want. We heard yesterday about repeat business, repeat business, repeat business. Inclusion and diversity helps build loyalty. So it's the secret sauce, the ingredients that can help us be truly ahead of our competitors and stay agile and respond to the changes. McKinsey found out that those organisations where the C-suite, the management, is truly diverse have a 33% chance of outperforming their competitors, their peers within the same industry. If you're a CEO, if you're a boss and I said I've got a secret sauce for you that's going to give you a 33% chance of beating everyone else, you'll probably have some of that sauce. Deloitte found that those organisations that embrace inclusion and diversity are twice as likely to hit or exceed their financial targets. If you're a chief financial officer, if you're an organisational accountant, and I offer you that secret sauce to double your chance of hitting or exceeding your financial goals, you'll probably have some of that. Harvard Business Review looked at companies that prioritise inclusion and diversity. So it's not just a policy, it's not just a top-down, but the organisation at the bottom embraces, talks, walks, is aligned with true inclusion and diversity. They have increased customer loyalty. Get a good customer, retain, resell, increase customer loyalty and increase revenue streams. And most organisations will take some of that secret sauce as well. So I did some work with a group of asylum seekers in Australia. So they were refugees and they were granted asylum, so they're now moving about society. And this young group, about 34, so probably similar to my daughter's classroom 27 years ago. They've got business ideas and they want to live in Australia and they want to contribute to society. They've got business ideas, but they struggle. English is their second, third, maybe fourth language. And they don't understand the weird, crazy Australian culture, let alone business. So my role, that's me up the back with the thumbs up, my role is to teach them how to pitch their business idea. And they've got some really brilliant creative ideas because the banks or the government or the not-for-profit is going to fund those business ideas that have a chance of succeeding. This is Farah. Farah escaped Iraq. 3 children, single mother, electrical engineer. Qualifications not recognised in Australia. She has an idea to create a food truck and sell Iraqi kebabs and beautiful spicy eggplant. She pitches and she wins the money, and for 5 years now she's been running this food truck. During the day, universities. During the week, universities. On the weekend, markets, fairs, stalls. 5 years looking at getting her second truck, employing lots of other refugees and other asylum seekers, paying her taxes, buying a house. Brilliant, brilliant outcome. But that wasn't her business model. This is her business model. This is the creativity, this is the uniqueness of having a truly inclusive and diverse society and workplace. She knew that Australians were a little bit resistant to refugees. We don't have the best reputation, for which I'm not proud of. She'd spoken to other refugees and she decided she was going to change Australian society one conversation at a time over a kebab. Students at university She's talking to them, she's having conversations, she's breaking down barriers, she's dispelling some of the myths. At markets on the weekend, she's talking to people, allaying their fears, and everyone realises that refugees are what contribute to our society. They're not a danger, they're not something to be afraid of. A really clever business model, changing Australia's society one conversation at a time, over a kebab. Brilliant. Neurodiversity, most of you know about neurodiversity, but it's becoming more prevalent at the moment, and there's a whole host of things you'll see up there, from ADHD, from Tourette's syndrome, from stuttering, from dyslexia, from high-functioning autism. There's acquired neurodiversity. You may have a motor vehicle accident, you may have a stroke, and the brain's just not quite the same. Neurodiverse people are brilliant. They bring increased levels of creativity. They look at problems in a different way. You know how you need to look at a problem by looking outside the box? Well, they don't look outside the box, they look outside of the box. And they're coming from an angle you would not have thought. Someone with dyslexia who has struggled to read that can memorise maps and signs of streets and the timetable of the bus. When they look at blueprints, electrical diagrams of plans, they can see inconsistencies, errors, mistakes that no one else would pick. Harness the power of that attention to detail. High-functioning autism, brilliant at computer programming, brilliant at coding. Curtin University has a program just for high-functioning people with autism to learn computer programming. They may not make eye contact with you at the meeting, and they may not want to socialise with you later on. Wow, such powerful stuff to harness all these neurodiverse people. And quite interesting, the Institute for Corporate Productivity found that if you employ someone who's neurodiverse and some other disabilities, you have an increased loyalty. You have increased creativity, increased innovation, greater resilience to change, to disruption. The National Organisation on Disability from the United States found that retention rates of people who are neurodiverse are 90% higher than those who are neurotypical. You employ 100 neurotypical people, you employ 100 neurodiverse people, advertise, interview, train, on board. 90% of the neurodiverse people are still going to be with you. Because if you give someone who's a little bit different, who's been rejected most of their life, you give them a chance, that loyalty to you, your company, will be brilliant. And it's a work with an amazing group of people, Down Syndrome Australia. These young people all have jobs, and they realised there was a problem in the health sector. People with disability and Down syndrome have lesser health outcomes than neurotypical people. And they started to work out why. And what happens is that student doctors, student nurses, and allied health are trained by academics who can talk about the genetics, the translocation, the trisomy 21, the mosaic Down syndrome, but really have no idea what it's like to live, to be with Down syndrome. So they've developed a program which has been going for about 2 years now. It's called the Health Ambassadors, Down Syndrome Australia Health Ambassadors. These young people now lecture to student doctors. They now lecture to student nurses at all Australian universities, to allied health, and they're teaching them how to communicate with someone who has a disability, someone who has Down syndrome, and they're improving their health outcomes for a whole host of people. Who'd have thought that Fancy ask someone who's living with a condition, how should I speak to you? How should I treat you? Why would you ask someone that? To me, it's a no-brainer. It's about inclusive communication, and these young people are changing the health of Australians with disability one lecture at a time. Absolutely amazing. The problem with neurodiversity, I mean, there's the power of creativity, innovation, you've got your loyalty, the unique problem solving, is that your hiring processes, your presentations, professional speakers, are designed for neurotypical people. So for the job interview, you probably want me to do a disc profile, a Myers-Briggs personality, then I've got a 45-minute type interview, and someone who's neurodiverse is going to struggle with the time pressure. And maybe there's an aptitude test. And the lack of eye contact from someone with Down syndrome will be seen as disinterest. Not reading the non-verbal communication may be perceived as, once again, not capable up for the job. So all this talent is missed when you use neurotypical hiring processes. Now, there was a young medical scientist who was ambitious and he had a bad stutter. And he applied for a job, emergency department pathology at a hospital. And the interview panel rang him and they said, young man, you need to be sharp, you need to be concise, because in an emergency pathology lab, you need cross-match blood, stat, 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 quick, quick. Where's that full blood count? We need that cardiac enzymes, quick, stat, stat, stat. So we're going to create that in the interview. And the young man replied, but I have a bad stutter. Could I have an extra 15 minutes? And the interview panel replied, no, you cannot. If I gave you an extra 15 minutes, that would be disadvantaging all the other applicants. You will have 45 minutes the same as anyone else. So here's a bit of an idea of what the interview would have looked like. That young man was me, of course, struggling to speak, to say my name and where I live. So the interview was an absolute disaster. I was rejected, and now I do professional speaking. But here's the thing. For 30 years, I worked as a medical scientist. And during that time, I cross-matched thousands and thousands of units of blood. This is when someone needs a hip replacement, they might be bleeding, postpartum hemorrhage, motor vehicle accident, maybe thalassemia, and you need that hemoglobin top-up. Not once did I issue incompatible blood, and you do not want to receive incompatible blood. Not once did I make a mistake. So my attention to detail, my adherence to quality control was 100%, and that's what you get when you employ someone who is neurodiverse. So we need to look a little bit deeper. Inclusion and diversity, do the deep dive, makes such a difference. So what can professional speakers do? And we can include this to human resources, recruitment. Create a psychologically safe place for people to participate in your workshops, in your seminars. I was in a hall like this a while back as an audience member, and the speaker came down with a microphone and started sticking it in people's faces. Why are you here and what do you want to learn? I went to the toilet for 30 minutes. Don't stick a microphone in someone who stutters' face. He didn't make it safe. He didn't let me know that if he did put it in front of my face, I was free to pass. It was expected that everyone would speak. Use multiple modes of learning. The Down syndrome people, they all read, by the way, but many of them can function better where there's a diagram, where there's an illustration, and especially when you're describing their health issue. Some people may need more time. That person you saw in the video, me, all I was asking for was an extra 15 minutes at an interview so I could maybe get over my stutters, maybe relax a little bit and be able to respond. And ensure that people have a voice at the table. For hundreds of years, Down syndrome people have been assumed that they don't know how they should be treated, that they should not be asked. Health professionals used to say to their parents, so what's wrong with Stephen? What's wrong with Shelley? Speak to the individual. So my message to you, once again, is become champions of inclusion and diversity. Become agents of change. When I looked at those 34 asylum seekers, I saw lots and lots of potential. When I look at those Down syndrome people, all that I see is lots and lots of potential. And 45 years ago, when Violet looked at that young man who stuttered, she saw lots and lots of potential. And hopefully you still see a bit of potential. Let's make inclusion and diversity, true inclusion and diversity, something that we are champions of. Let's become agents of change. Everyone should feel welcome and all, regardless of all our differences.